Hello people, and thank you for coming to watch this video, which is all about the government hospital at Banglamung in Pattaya, Thailand. I've actually just been finishing editing the video that I made about it, and I realized that there was something very important that I had omitted in the video, and I needed to add it to the video. And that's the reason I'm talking to you now, because it is important, and it would have been very disrespectful of me to have uploaded the video without actually talking about it. What I'm talking about is when I went to the hospital, and it was, as you'll see if you watch the rest of the video, it was a really bad, traumatic experience that I come away a little bit the worse for wear from. What I neglected to say, and what I really should say, is that on that particular day that I went to the hospital, I was severely unwell. And as you see the way the hospital reacted, etc., I could have died at any moment. So I realize now that it's quite possible that that visit to the hospital saved my life on that day. Strangely enough, it's almost as though all the factors of the providence, etc., came together, along with my wife pushing me to go and see the doctor when I did. These were all key factors on producing, maybe saving me. And sometimes things work out in strange ways. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. My full appreciation to the hospital, even though it was a horrific, horrible, terrible experience. They still do their job, and they do it well. So thank you very much to them. So let's carry on with the video. Hello everyone, Sandy here from We Are Talk of Thailand, and today's video is the follow-up video to my last medical one, where I was going to have to go to the hospital, which I duly went to, and this is my third attempt to make that video. And the reason being is it was a very traumatic experience. It started well, and it went downhill fairly quickly, and it turned out to be the most horrific experience I think I've had in a long time. And I'm going to tell you about that now. So we went to the hospital, and this was last Wednesday, we went to the hospital and went through registration, which is a thing you've got to do. You've got to have a blood pressure test at the door, and then you go to registration, and they make out a registration card. If you're a foreigner, it's advisable to take a passport or a driving license or something with you to verify your identity. And from the registration, we then went to the central information desk, which is in the middle of the area that you come into. There's a circle of tables, and there's maybe about 4 or 5 nurses working behind these tables. And this is the admin center for the reception and the hospital itself. So I went there, and I told them that I'd come for a blood test, and I wanted to see a doctor. I wanted a blood test, and I thought I was a bit anemic. So they made the paperwork out, and they told me what doctor I was seeing, and I went and saw the doctor. Now the queue system in the hospital, outside each doctor's door, there's the name of the doctor inside, and there's a row of chairs, and what you've got to do is sit on the end chair. Now, if somebody comes out of the doctor's surgery, the person on the other end stands up and goes in, and then everybody moves down a chair. A bit like musical chairs, actually. It's which I found quite humorous. Anyway, I went and saw the doctor. He said, okay, then go and have he didn't spend any time on it at all, actually. He said, okay. He made the note out to go for a blood test, and off we went. And the blood test was in another building, so we got there, and it only took about a few minutes to get a blood test. And then we were told, okay, we would have to wait 2 hours for the results of this blood test. Not sure what we would do for 2 hours. We discussed going out for something to eat, but I was in my wheelchair, which meant it would have to be loaded back into the pickup and then parking, etc. So we just decided to stay at the hospital. There was a coffee shop there, so we went into the coffee shop. I had a couple of nice lattes. Em had an espresso, and we sat there for just over an hour. And then we decided that we were going to go and have a little walk. I wasn't walking, I was riding my wheelchair, obviously. We'd have a little look around the outside. And we were going round, and then about 20 minutes before the 2 hours was up, I heard a broadcast saying my name and that I should report to the information centre immediately. Oh, well, what's that all about? I didn't expect them to be broadcasting me to come for it, and they knew I was coming in 2 hours. So we went there, down to the information centre where all the nurses were. And she said, where have you been? I said, well, we've just been going around. She said, okay, listen. And she had this big red piece of paper, that's significant, in her hand. And she said, right, go and see this doctor over there, once again, the chair system. So while we were going, I was sitting in the chair, I looked at this piece of red paper. Now there was a computer file name on there, which I assumed that the doctor accessed to get the report on my test. And there was also 2 notes that they'd first broadcast for me at 1:15 on the day, and then the next time was at just before 20 to 2, and that's the one I heard. So it was obviously they were important that they got a hold of me. And of course, you know, I've seen this all over the world, the red blanket system or the red card system, meaning it's urgent and it needs urgent attention. And I understood that right away. So I went in to see the doctor. When he saw the red slip, his eyes kind of opened quite wide, and he pulled the file up on his computer. And he said, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. He said, we're going to have to admit you urgently. I said, what's the problem? And he said, according to this, your red blood cells are down to just under 5% of what they should be. And there's a possibility you could drop any time. And he said, it's very, very serious, so we're going to have to admit you. You know what went through my head? Oh, I'm not prepared to be admitted just now. I'd rather come back tomorrow to be admitted. And maybe I should say to the doctor, can I come back tomorrow? And then I'm thinking about it, and I'm looking at this red paper, and I said, I don't think he's going to wear that. So I decided just to go along with what they said. So it all gone swimmingly well, actually. You did the first part up to the red piece of paper, and we've been going through there quite quick, and I had it in my mind that we'd be back home in about 4 hours, or maybe 5 hours at the maximum. But this absolutely changed all that quite a bit. So I then had to go to the admissions desk. Now, let me just tell you another thing here. Everything you do, including the blood test, before I could go for the blood test, Em had to go to the cashier counter and pay for the blood test, which I think was about 2,000 baht. And now, as they were admitting me, they said that they wanted a deposit of 10,000 baht to be admitted. So she had to go back and pay that, all in cash, only cash. So fortunately there was an ATM at the hospital, and getting cash wasn't a real problem. But be aware, if you ever have to go there, everything's got to be paid up front, and it's important. Anyway, after they'd done all the admission paperwork, we were told to just wait there, and somebody would come and get us. And that was quite a long wait, actually. It was about 40 minutes we were waiting there before some guy turned up, and saw, they'd also put a band around my wrist, a white band with my name and everything on it. And this guy come and saw us, and he wanted to see the white band, he had the right person and all the rest of it. And then he wanted to get a wheelchair. I said, no, I've got my wheelchair here. So he said, okay. He didn't look too happy about that, but anyway. We followed him up, and we went in the lift and then up to the floor where the ward was that I was getting admitted to. Now, maybe I'd been kept waiting in that information area while they made the bed up, etc., because the ward that I went into, there was about 70 people in there. There was some small room dividers in there of insignificance. You just about a metre and a half high, splitting up the different sections. And in the part of the ward that they admitted me to, there was 10 people in there, including myself, 10. So they put me in there. Now then, when I got there, it all did switch to emergency very, very quickly, actually. The doctor said, the doctor in the ward said that they were going to be giving me 2 bottles of saline drip, and they were going to get me an urgent blood transfusion, which we kind of guessed that I needed anyway. And then they'd done all sorts of, there was all sorts of little medications, tablets, etc., being given to me, and injections, and then they were taking various tests, a whole host of tests they took to see what else had been wrong with me. And it was a bit of a panic, actually. And actually, in the 2 days that I was in there, my arms, when I came out, my arms were very sore because of all the injections I had. They'd had trouble getting veins, etc., and they'd been scraping against the bones, and it was a painful experience. Anyway, they got, as soon as I got on the bed, they put this drip in me, but I was still dressed with all my civilian, my daily garb from home, and they brought along some hospital garb. But by this time, they'd already put in my arm the saline drip, and this is hanging up above me, and there was no way I could change my shirt, because they would have to disconnect the drip, and they didn't seem too keen to do that. So that was that, and I was then stuck in the bed, and they continued to come and monitor me and do all sorts of things. I don't really know about that. There was a lot of panic about it, and as it transpired, and somebody told one of the doctors told that I could have been dropping, the way they put it. I could have been dropping at any time, because this was a very, very serious condition. You know, I kind of guessed it was serious. Now, I was very, very weak, but I didn't really think of the implications of what it was, etc. And maybe if I'd gone a long time ago, it would never have got so bad. But that was it. Anyway, in this ward, and amongst the 10 people in my section, I was on the very last section, so you had to pass all the sections on the way down to where my bed was. As I say, there was about 70 people there, and a lot of them were delirious and non-compos mentis. Very sad. When I got into the bit that I was in, there was an American in one corner. He was busy talking to people in the States and making telephone calls, all in his mind, but talking and shouting all the time. And there was a few in there, and you could hear people in the other sections shouting, etc. One of the most significant factors about this now, an hour after I moved in, the guy in the far corner on my left, he passed about an hour after I got admitted to that section. And they just come in and they wheeled his bed away, and that was it. And they brought in another bed, and that was him gone. Which was a little bit of a traumatic start. Now then, Em had to go home and get Sandra, but she came back at 7 o'clock at night. And when she came back in the evening, she said as she came in, the guy on the far right on my side of the section, she said to me, she said, that guy there, she says, he's lying there and his eyes are open, but there's nothing in his eyes. They've rolled up into his head. And it looks pretty horrible, she said. So anyway, he expired within a few minutes of him coming back. And once again, they wheeled him off. Now, the story was that with him, he had had an altercation with a dog somewhere in Pattaya, and he had contracted rabies. And it was the rabies that killed him. Now, the 8 staff that had been tending to this guy all had to go for an anti-rabies injection just to cover themselves. And that was quite, I would imagine that's quite horrendous for them. Because I hear it's a very painful injection, actually. So that first night, it was terrible with this American talking away to himself and other people. I heard some young guy shouting. He sounded English, but he might have been from somewhere else, but he sounded like he sounded English. And he's shouting, "Mommy, Mommy, I don't want to die. Please come and get me. I don't want to die here." And he was going on all night. And the nursing staff were shut in their office. And I don't suppose there was much they could do about it. I also noted, that the other admissions in my section, out of the 10 people, there was at least 5 of them had been tied down by their wrists to their bed and by their ankles to their bed. I said to him, "What's that all about then?" She said, "These are people that have problems with drugs, alcohol, or smoking," she said. "It's to prevent them from breaking the hospital rules, and anybody that's uptight and wants to create problems, then they get tied down like that when they're admitted." And I have to admit that the next morning, they took all the bindings off, and that was it, because they'd gone through the night and they'd obviously sobered up or whatever, why they had to be confined like that. The only exception to that was the American guy. Now, he was heavily bound, very heavily bound, to his bed, with both ankles spread eagled on the bed, and his wrists also. But he didn't really know anything that was going on. As I said, he was completely compos mentis and just talking and shouting. And anyway, that ran on, and then the next morning they wake you up at 5 o'clock. They turn on all the lights, and then the medication comes round, and then they come round with all the machines and take your blood pressure and your oxygen levels and all that sort of thing. And it's all done between 5 and 6 o'clock. Then everybody's got to clean themselves and shower. Well, a lot of the people in there couldn't make the shower, so they get bed bath. But they have to do a lot of it themselves. Not all. That's not fair, actually. The nurses do bed bath. Some of the guys as well. But change your hospital garb and then wash yourself down, and that's just after 6 o'clock to maybe 6:30. And then they bring round the breakfast. Now, that brings me to food. I didn't eat the hospital food. It looked completely unappetizing to me. It was a bag of rice, and sometimes with a bowl of some sort of soup, and I just couldn't face it. I just could not face that at all. In fact, I ate very little in the time I was there, but Em brought me in some stuff to nibble on and to get away, so not always too bad. Anyway, we're now into my second day in this ward, and it's completely uneventful for most of the day because I'm on this saline drip, and at some stage in the afternoon the first bottle run out, and then they put on it was some stage in the morning the first bottle run out, and then they put on the second bottle. Now, come 6 o'clock at night, the second bottle had just about run out. And I said to the senior nurse in the ward, I said, look, when this finishes, can you take this drip off my arm and I can get a better night's sleep? And she said, no, I can't. I've got to leave it on now. Oh, why? Because that's the policy of the hospital. So you're going to leave a drip on my arm that's doing nothing? She said, yep. I was really pissed off then, really, really pissed off, because my arms were hurting with all these injections and things. And I wanted to get a good night's sleep, and if you've got this hanging off your arm, you can't turn over or anything. You've got to do what you can to get sleep. Anyway, M saved the day again as well. Because that morning I had gone to the toilet by myself when they'd been changing the drip. I went to the toilet and relieved myself, and then I came back and they carried on with whatever they were doing. So Em went and saw this nurse, and she said, why can't you take that drip off? She said, I'm afraid he's going to start walking around, and I'm not so sure he's stable enough to walk around. Em says, he wants to go to the toilet and things. She said, he can't. She said, well, he did this morning. And then this nurse threw a double six. She was not impressed, and she came down quickly and took my drip off my arm. And it started a little bit of a bad feeling with her, and I think she had a bit of resentment against me. Now let me just talk about resentment for a moment. You know, I do get a feeling there that there are Thais down there that resent foreigners being treated in the hospital. That we're taking up beds that Thai people need, and they think it should be limited to Thai people in there, and the foreigners can go and pay their way in the big private hospitals. I did detect a little bit of that amongst 2 or 3 people, and in some ways I kind of understand that, and maybe I'd feel the same if I was Thai. Anyway, into the second night. About 3 o'clock in the morning, this American took a bad turn, and he started convulsing and shaking, and really, really shaking. And I've seen this before several times actually, when people are about to depart this world, and they have these convulsions and shakes and all the rest of it. And I was lying watching this guy, and I thought, he's not got long left. He's on his way out. So what did the hospital staff do? They came in and they tried to hold him down to stop all the shaking, but they couldn't. So then they got some really thick bandages and bound him up more to the bed, and really kept him, bound him tight. The end result was that the bed was shaking and making a horrific racket. And so I think they had to release those bandages a bit, because it was worse than the noise that he was making by himself. Anyway, about 7 o'clock in the morning, he passed, and then they took him away. They took him out, and I felt quite sad for him. He had a horrific passing. Not that he knew anything about it, and that's the only consolation to it, but it wasn't good to see. Now then, when the doctor, but I made a major decision. After watching this guy dying like that, I made a major decision. I thought, right, they finished the water drips into my arm. They'd already told me they're having problems getting the blood, and it might be another day. I made the decision, I am not staying in this hospital one more night. Absolutely no way. I'm getting to hell out of here. And I called this senior nurse that I'd had a bit of a run-in with, and I said, listen, when the doctor comes round at 10 o'clock this morning, tell them I want to be discharged, and I want to go home about 10 o'clock this morning. She said, you cannot discharge yourself. I said, I can discharge myself. I said, I'm paying for this damned hospital. I said, I'm paying to be here. Of course I can discharge myself. Yeah. And she got a right miff on anyway. But About 9 o'clock, these two doctors came round and they said, that they'd identified that my problem was that this blood problem that was a very low percentage of red blood cells, very low, less than 5% in my body, and I needed an urgent transfusion. But unfortunately, because of my blood group, there was no blood available at that time. And they would arrange, they'd already contacted some donors that had this type of blood, and they were going to be giving blood, but it would take them about 2 weeks to coordinate all the collection and get it down here. So on the 21st of February, I've got to go and have my blood transfusion. And they've said that that should take about 3 hours to get the blood into me. And if all's well for an hour after that, then I can go home afterwards. If not, then they might have to admit me again. God forbid. God forbid. I would fight that tooth and nail, I can assure you. So, I told the doctors I wanted to go home, and the lady doctor said, okay, she said, but it has to be afternoon. They don't release patients until 12 o'clock at the earliest, and that's to keep the system working with all the medications and things like that. So the people in the hospital are taken care of before the people departing the hospital, which is fair enough, I suppose. But then this male doctor, he said to me, he said, okay, but maybe stay another day, he said, and we can give you a colonoscopy and the other one, I can't think of the name of it, where they put the camera right up your bum and they put the other camera down in your stomach. Now, what they're looking for is to detect internal bleeding. And I know for an absolute fact I am not bleeding internally. And I would recognize it, no problem. I don't have any discharges anywhere. When I go to the toilet, my stools are, because I'm anemic, they're very light colored actually. And you would see any blood in there. And I knew that wasn't the case. And I'd already had these horrific tests done about 2.5 years ago, I think, in the UK, when they were wondering why I'd lost so much weight. Well, I'd lost so much weight because I live here in Thailand now, and I tried to tell them that, but they wanted to double check. And they double checked and they said, yeah, there's no problem there. So, but there is obviously a problem why my red blood cells are so low. But they've given me a whole host of tablets to take 3 times a day, things like iron tablets and folic acid tablets and vitamin B tablets and, everything. So hopefully they'll help me work. They'll help me proceed on to the 21st of the month. So I guess the only question left to answer is, how do I feel now? Well, actually, when I came home, I felt a bit better, and I think I'm still a little bit better. Sometimes I don't get fatigued so much, but I seem to be sleeping a lot more, and I'm going to the toilet a lot more than I used to do, and sometimes I feel really weak. I've now got a walking stick in addition to my wheelchair because I can struggle with my balance, even walking through the house here sometimes. So I'm insisting that I use this walking stick. And I do that actually. And I'm beginning to get used to it, and it's a good thing. So that's the story of the hospital, people. But I just wind this video up by saying, look, if you're contemplating using the government hospital here in Pattaya, be aware of what you're facing, because it's not good. There's lots of departments in there. There's dentistry, x-rays, maternity, etc. Phalanges, and they should be no problem, actually. When Em had Sandra, she had it in Banglamung Hospital, but she had a private room. briefly talk about private rooms. There is private rooms available, but there was none available when I was admitted to the hospital. And they did mention that if there was one available, it would cost 3,000 baht a day, which is, I don't know, 75 quid a day, something like that. So it would certainly be well worth it, I think. I don't know how well furnished they are. They're nowhere near the beautiful suites that are in Bangkok Pattaya Hospital, but they would have to be better than that huge ward with 70 people where, hell's going loose. So, but there was none available, and there was a queue to get in. And the other big drawback was that if you were admitted to a private room, then you had to have somebody stay with you all the time. Your wife or your girlfriend or a friend, or somebody had to be with you 24 hours a day. And that would have been impossible for us because we've got Sandra, my daughter, and Em's got to take care of all sorts of things here. God bless her. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman and helped me tremendously through this ordeal that I'm going through. I think that just about sums this video up. So I'll say thank you very much for watching, and I'll keep you updated on my next venture to the hospital, which is supposed to be on the 21st of February for the blood transfusion. Hopefully. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care, and bye for now.